ladies and gentlemen, it is what you've been waiting for. It is the premiere episode of Arm Crossfire with SB and Gobby. And with me today, of course, Mr. Chris Gobby, national champion. How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited. This is something that's been maybe a long time coming. So maybe before we talk about how the Arm Crossfire came to be, let's talk about the fall of your previous podcast.
Yeah, so it started off strong. For years, Herman and I always talked about, Herman and I never met, but we were always in contact and had some type of Facebook connection based on trolling. And, we bonded over our hatred and censorship and stuff like that. So we always talked about maybe doing a podcast. And the idea was approached to me with him and Joe. I thought it was awesome. But the idea presented to me was ARMHUB would be a platform. Joe would be doing a lot of the technical stuff. That's where his merit and value was. And Herman and I would do a show. Every once in a while, we'd have a guest. And on the first episode, Joe came in, which was fine. As it progressed, I kept saying to Herman that I didn't think I'm getting negative feedback, negative messages. And Herman says, well, I think he has value. We'll keep him. I said, no problem. As it progressed, and I kept getting more and more negative feedback, at one point I had to say, and I personally didn't, I agreed with the feedback. I personally did not think that Joe's a good guy. Joe's an ambassador for the sport. Joe's a good tech guy. He has his own YouTube channel that's successful. I just didn't see his merit on the podcast itself. In fact, when we would do a show with a third or a fourth person, Joe sometimes would be inexistent. You know, he would literally have no input and no value other than taking up the screen. And at one point, I just had to say, listen, it doesn't feel right to me. I'm no longer going to go on with him. And I thought this would, and I was going to stand on this value or this position no matter what. But what happened, I believe that once I brought it and the evidence that I was receiving negative feedback, Joe would automatically recluse himself. If I was in a political party and there was concrete evidence that I'm hurting the greater good, I would recluse myself, as the greater good is bigger than one individual. Joe didn't do this, and I think Herman, although some kind of agreed with me, I don't think Herman's a real softy. He could be a real good guy, and I don't think Herman had the heart to push him off, as Joe felt he had a position on the podcast. So ultimately, I said I'm not coming back, and they decided they're not going to continue on the show. Which basically, the fact that Herman thought he couldn't continue with Joe, basically reinforced my position that Joe had no position on the show. So that's it. So it ended like that, and so there you go. And I was a little bit. I wouldn't say I was a little. It was unfortunate, but not regrettable. If that comes up 10 times out of 10, I do the same thing. Regardless of how valuable or something is or how much potential something is, when I feel something is wrong or unnatural to me, I'll always close that door. So it's unfortunate, but not regrettable. And the fact that they couldn't continue it kind of speaks volumes. And then 2 weeks later, you sent me a message, and I kind of laughed, and I said, because I don't really need to be on a podcast. I enjoy talking, I enjoy speaking, I enjoy voicing my opinion on any platform, but it's not something I need in my life as a fundamental part. But I said, well, this could be fun. Whether it can monetize or whatever, I just figured why not? It's worth a shot. Because I always do think that the world of arm wrestling does need, they've had different podcasts come in and out, but arm wrestling's never had something consistent over maybe even over the course of one full year. So I figured the sport, kind of like the rankings, the sport deserves a set of rankings, and it deserves a weekly show to address the problems and analyze stuff that's been going on and stuff that's about to go on. So I figured, well, it's good for the sport. We'll give it a go.
Yeah, and from my side of things, like, I've got a YouTube channel. I put out stuff. I put out some content, and I started doing an interview series, and you were one of my guests, and people seemed to really enjoy that show that we had. So I think it was actually my wife that said, why don't you and Gobby do a podcast? And I thought, well, I don't know about that. And I was thinking about it. And then ARMHUB stopped suddenly. And because I used to look for the episodes, it was gone.
Yeah.
And then we talked a little bit about the downfall of ARMHUB and the ending of the show. And I went on and I said, well, when does ours start? And you kind of laughed, and I was kind of kidding. And then you sent me back that message saying, it would probably work. So here we are, all this time later.
I think my value is not analytics, or my value specifically more today than any other time in recent history. That I Facebook, social media, everyone is just compliant and agreeing on everything. My position, even I will take a counter argument, even if I don't actually believe that argument, because it stimulates thought and provokes change. So my position, although hated by many, I think is essential, and some appreciate it, some detest it. But I think someone in the world has to just fucking say what's on their mind and not give a fuck what people think, even if only to stimulate thought by 10% of the audience that reads it on Facebook. So although sometimes I go to bed thinking, what did I do today, man? I got blocked by 5 people. I received death threats from multiple former champions, not to name names. And then I'm thinking, I wake up in the morning thinking, some fucking guy has to do it. And sometimes I find joy in it. Other times I don't. I find that I'm pissing people off is not always a pleasant thing for me. But I think it's essential. Someone just has to fucking speak their mind more or less eloquently, if no other reason, to promote potential change in philosophies or paradigms. Someone has to fucking just speak their mind. Herman was good. Herman was good at that. You're not overly vocal, but you do speak your mind when it's presented. And so I figured, not only is Ryan, there's conviction behind what he thinks, so you have integrity, but you're also have incredible credibility among around the arm wrestling world. World champion, CAWF, which isn't easy to attain. There are many greats in the sport that have yet to win a CAWF title in North America. Like North Americans, it is. I've always claimed that it's the hardest thing to win in our sport, possibly in the history of our sport. Arguably with the Golden Bear back in the 70s and 80s. So you're credible. You got integrity. I know how to piss people off. Potentially, this has some some merit to it. So let's.
I was just going to tell everyone that you're the most beloved man in arm wrestling, and that everyone's really looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Yeah,
that'll be half right, maybe.
Yeah, I'll believe it. I actually agree in the second half of that statement, not the first half. But that is the nature of someone who always tells the truth. That person will never be popular, and the more he speaks the truth, or the truth in his mind, the less popular he's going to be. Everyone finds me entertaining, and everyone loves me until I question something about them. I mean, you and I, man, I've always had tons of respect for you, but you and I locked horns on the Visalis thing years ago, and you fucking just you couldn't stand me. I was probably the most hated guy in your mind. But hence a man who has an opinion and doesn't back off his opinion, right? Never going to be popular.
Yeah, I was really pissed off, and you got me, and then I think I came up to you in Ottawa at the Nationals, and I put my hand on your shoulder and I said, "Hey, Chris, how's it going?"
Yeah. There's a notion also that I'm a keyboard warrior guy that goes to live events and runs away from confrontation. I'm obviously not going to try to confront anyone aggressively at a competition, because it's arm wrestling and that's the last thing the sport needs. But there's this notion that I'm fearful and running away because I'm not a man of large stature. Anyone that wants to come see me, I've always said, I'll tell you exactly what I think of you. And I always believe that if I go to a person and say, listen, I just don't have much respect for you, and that person wants to put a knife or fucking choke me out or shoot me or stab me, that's indicative of deep insecurity on his end. I've had people tell me I hate you and disrespect you, and I'm like, cool, it's all good, man. You're entitled to your opinion. I love constructive criticism. And all, but I just find that when you can say something about someone in a non-deplorable way, just be honest and upfront, saying, I just basically don't respect you, and I think maybe there's some cowardice behind who you are, and they lose their shit. That's indicative of who they are. So you put your hand on me. I was like, part of me was like survival mechanism comes into play, and like, what am I gonna have to do here? But I also realized I knew you well enough to know that you're not an overly heated guy. You don't lose your shit. Most really large men tend to have a calm demeanor. It almost comes part and parcel with your DNA, because if large men saw red often, they'd be in prison for accidentally killing somebody. So I think large men have to have this calm demeanor to them, as a way to survive and not always be in prison, right? So I wasn't overly worried when you put your hand on me, but it's not the first time someone walks up to me in the tournament and says, "Hey, what's up?"
Yeah, it's all good. And I think I realized that, opinions will vary, and some people have stronger ones than others. But, it's going to be. It's been a long road for me, especially being involved with like municipal politics and stuff.
Yeah.
There's always somebody that's going to hate you, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And if you're giving your opinion and voicing how you feel, that's what your job is anyway, and you're supposed to do that. So there needs to be a little bit more of people not just jumping on bandwagons and following the status quo. And with that being said, I think the first thing we're going to talk about is probably the hottest subject that's going right now, and some little bit of context here. I tried to add you to a couple of threads last night, and apparently the people that had posted them had banned you, so you couldn't see them. But we're going to talk about. We're recording this on Friday afternoon. So last night was the World Arm Wrestling League. It's 504, right? Yeah, it was 504. And the super match card that happened in LA, and I think we're going to leave Devin and Dave to last. I think we probably should do that because it's going to have the most discussion. It's the hottest issue in all of arm wrestling at the moment. And so where do you want to start, man? You want to talk about Fia and Malin?
Yeah. So I don't really follow international women's arm wrestling that much. I did North America when I was doing the rankings. I had no choice. I didn't really know who was favored in this one. I know they're both elite. They both have great accolades and titles and this and that. I really didn't know. And frankly, I didn't see it. This is one of the few matches I didn't see. I was at work and I was only able to watch live videos sporadically. But I'm not overly surprised. But then again, it could have gone the other way and I wasn't overly surprised. So maybe you have more input on that one.
I do have a little bit. I thought Fia was going to win. I honestly did, just because she's been more active. She's been, she's younger. She's hungry. Yeah. But I also knew that it could go the other way quite easily because Malin has been around forever. She's been around as long as me, and I remember seeing her at World Championships in the early 2000s.
Wow.
She was a killer back then. I think she came right through the junior classes, and she has been amazing. And I have never. I've been paying attention on social media. I've seen her training, and I've seen her visibly getting larger and stronger looking throughout the process. So if Malin came in here and just crushed her, I wouldn't have been surprised either. And that is pretty much what happened. Mm-hmm. Fia didn't have really anything for her. Both girls were a little bit of nerves in match one, and I think Malin got away with a bit of a fast start, but it didn't seem to matter because every match was the same. Fia's hand and wrist just couldn't contain anything she had, and the strap seemed to make it worse. Wow.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
Really though, just the fact that two European women are brought up by Wall to Los Angeles is just good for the sport. Women need to be the elite women need to be recognized and paid, and they were. So that was always good, regardless of the winner. I'm happy for them. They deserve that.
And just on a side note to that, if anyone from the WL is watching this, there's one woman they're overlooking, and they've been overlooking her for a while, and that's Christine Flicka from Canada. And she had the performance of her life at the Nationals.
I heard.
So I think the last time she pulled Angie Rose, she actually won.
Okay.
And I think she should get a nod pretty soon.
Is she native to your province, or is it Alberta? Where's she from?
I first met Flicka back in the 90s, and she's actually was in Thunder Bay at the time.
Thunder Bay, okay.
Paul Levesque and those guys, and now she's out in Alberta.
Alberta, okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
And there was a good period of time there, maybe even 10 years, where she was inactive, and then suddenly came back and looked like twice muscularity that she was previously. So she'd obviously been training in that off time, but yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, we'll get to nationals later on. I have some questions and stuff about what happened at nationals. I wasn't there, but yeah, we'll get to her and the
sure. Yeah. So match 2, Jamie Sheldon, Alan Fisher.
Yeah.
Well, again, not match. We're jumping around here, of course, but we'll just do them as we do them. So,
Jamie's been on a constant, incline of progression and hunger, and is a naturally raw, gifted athlete. Alan's iconic and a legend, although declining with age, like we all will. So, I think Jamie was the favorite. I'm not surprised with the 3-0. I thought that when I read your predictions, and I think your predictions are mostly right on. I just don't think that the wall with wall cards you're going to see too many 3-2, 3-1. We're seeing a lot of 3-0s, and partly to that is I think they do a terrible job on matchmaking. I can go into detail later, but this was not a bad matchup. There's mutual respect. It's kind of like the changing of the guard. There's a full generation between the two, and I'm happy for Jamie. I mean, young entrepreneur, hungry as hell, beat Alan. No big surprise. I believe he was favored, and there you go. What were your thoughts?
My thoughts were simply that there was a lot of hype around how Alan looked lately, and how he was almost having a career resurgence, and that he was looking amazing and strong. And they kind of pulled a Dana White on me, I think, a little bit, where he can take somebody that shouldn't even that maybe has no chance, and they make you a believer based on other things, right?
Yeah.
But logically, and that's how I made my predictions. Logically, who's going to win these without all the emotional stuff that comes into some of these matches? I picked Jamie to win, and he looked really good, and he pulled off that win fairly soundly, and I don't think Alan could have got into that match no matter what.
Yeah, that's it. It's changing of the guard. Alan's got to be 60. Is he over 60? He's got to be, if not.
They said on the broadcast last night that his first arm wrestling tournament was 1979. I was 3 years old.
40 years in the sport.
So let's say he's 20 when he first starts arm wrestling.
So he's mid 60s at least. Well, I don't know, something like that. Early 60s. Yeah, but anyway, arguably the most world titles. World titles, quote unquote. But the dude's definitely up there in the top 3-4 best arm wrestlers to ever live, pound for pound. Or in terms of just sheer accolades and titles won. And even at his age, to be on a pro card getting paid is big. We can all hope to be there one day. So good for him for pulling, but he was an underdog going in.
Yeah. Okay, Bowen and Alan Guerra, Ryan Blue Bowen.
Yeah, I think this matchup was made. This was one matchup they got right in terms of Ryan's doing some help with. I think Ryan's helping them in some of their social media networking stuff, and I figured they wanted to give him a bone. If they talk to someone who really knows about arm wrestling, Ryan feeds on hookers. So I think it was a good matchup for Ryan. Alan, super strong, but again, susceptible to a high game. Ryan has a tremendous high game. Ryan seems to be proving his critics wrong over and over again, starting with me with the bottom 8, beat Evan. He's just doing great things and deserves a world of respect for his progression. And this time last year, I had him rated as a 2. Now we can argue he might even be pushing a 4, 3 to 4 level tier arm wrestler. So good for him, and he's doing tons of work. Networking and building his own channel and stuff like that. So good for him. Again, he was favored. I believe he was favored stylistically, and the favorite won.
Well, the match was interesting for me, and I knew it was going to be tight, and I went back and forth on this one a bit. I thought Alan might pull it off, but Ryan, he's got that kind of stay high and bleed the guy out a little bit style. So every second that match progressed, I thought that he had a better shot at it. The first match, Allen looked so comfortable, and he was kind of shit talking him, but he couldn't pin him either. So every second that went on, I either thought that, okay, Allen's either in trouble here a little bit, or he hasn't studied his opponent, because this is Ryan's game right here, and this is what he wants to do. And Ryan, he goes from the bottom 8, and all of a sudden he's starting to beat like some guys that are in the World Arm Wrestling League. And then did you happen to see the call out that he made?
No.
He did not call out Paul Lynn. He called out Justin Bishop.
I don't mind that. It's a better matchup for him than Paul Lynn. Justin Bishop is a smart target for Ryan. I don't believe. First of all, he lost to him, so there's a little bit of revenge there. It's not a terrible matchup, as they're both they both pull high. Their styles are similar. Justin has more arm. Justin has more side pressure. Justin has, I believe, probably has a better strap game. Although Ryan's strap game isn't weak either. But I don't hate that. I don't mind that. Paul Lynn is a stretch because Paul just has too much horsepower for Ryan.
Yeah.
But I like that call out. It's a smart call out. It is a very smart call out. It's a very smart call out. Yeah. It's not a uneducated, ballsy, not thought out. No, he definitely thought that one out. I like it.
Yeah. No, it's a good call out and impressive. Like that talk about Ryan Bowen could be table IQ. He could be one of the top guys in the class at WAL because he came in with a pretty clear game plan and executed it. He didn't just come to the table thinking he's going to arm wrestle and see what happens. He seemed to really know what he was doing as far as the strategy for all 5 matches, and probably finished it even quicker than he thought he was going to.
Yeah, table IQ is one thing, but to be able to apply that IQ in tremendous stress when you have to, in a practical means, and I find those are 2 great traits of his. Yes, he knows arm wrestling. He's very technically, his adjustments are great, but to do it in harsh surroundings, like after dealing with jet lag in Ontario against a bigger Evan, in a bar that's full of Evan's fans yelling at him, he never loses focus. Last night with his wife, first time ever, his wife cheering him on. First time she's ever watched a live tournament, I believe. And here he is, calm and collected. That is shit. You cannot teach that. You can't inject it. It's his intangible.
The man takes a loss and he's unshakable.
Yeah, his intangible traits are very, very, very impressive and very, very, very rare in our sport.
Yeah. So hats off to him for sure. Yeah. And excited to see what happens for him next. Next up, we got Matt Mask, Sylvain Perron.
Yeah, man. As I predicted, I almost made a prediction 2 weeks ago that Sylvain was going to injure himself. He injured himself in the same fashion against you in 2015 Mike Gold Classic, and I just had an argument with my friend John Lassard. He says it was the right arm. Didn't you injure his left arm? Wasn't it the left bicep?
I beat him both arms.
But it was I believe my recollection is you tore his left, and because his left was torn, he pulled his right out of the tournament. I believe he tore his left in 2015.
Well, if you look at he did have surgery on that right arm as well. Like
I could be wrong.
I think it was a right arm injury.
Okay.
And it was back then. And I don't like it when they do this. I don't like it when they take a guy. Like, this was almost disrespectful to Sylvain a little bit here, because Matt is a guy and I'll tell you a story, and probably the world does not know this, but they called me, the WAL called me, and they said, hey, do you want to pull Matt in LA? And this was like very short notice. Couldn't get out of work. Still a little shoulder messed up from pulling Jerry. And I said, I can't. I said, I actually did try to get out of work and I couldn't. So I said no. And the next day Sylvain was booked.
Yeah.
Like they had announced the match and was short notice, but it was a mismatch. It was a clear mismatch right from the start. And I don't care what Sylvain did. He's a legend, but you can't just give a guy 5 years off and bring him back and expect to insert him right exactly where he was when he left. It doesn't work that way. So you take this whole legend that is, stylistically, Matt's a nightmare for him, and then you don't know really where he's at. I know all the Quebec guys are saying like he was training, he's doing this and that, he's super strong in a hook, but man, you got to get there, and there's a lot of unknowns.
The Quebec, there's no province that is more biased and ignorant to the abilities of their own pullers than Quebec. He's their John Brzenk, right? Since Denny's been retired, Sylvain, and even before when Denny was in his prime, Denny was a top roller. Sylvain in his prime was the definition of an absolute gladiator, grinder, warrior. Never ever gave up. Tons of heart, and of course that makes him alone an iconic legend. The fact that he won worlds, the fact that he arguably at one point was top 5 in the world. Matt Mask, his move, his explosive nature, the amount of torque that's put on your arm with that speed, versus an aging 48-year-old who has torn his bicep, basically throwing Sylvain to the wolves. Of course, Sylvain's a grown man. He could have said no. He wanted the money. He went. No big deal. But they threw him to the wolves. And once that match was official, the happiest man on earth was Matt Mask, because Matt Mask is like, I just got thrown a gimme. It's hard to say. It's hard to admit that Sylvain Perron was a gimme. But when you look at the style, when you look at the fact that Matt Mask can go back on those pads, that everything taken into consideration, age, injuries, table, reffing, Matt was given a gimme, and Sylvain was thrown to the wolves. One thing I don't like about Wall, I mean, it's the main pro card going now, so whatever, but they keep putting Ferraris with diesel trucks. And I don't love that. It's okay. You want to see style matches. Styles make matches. I get it. But in certain times, I would have loved to seen Sylvain versus Todd. Jerry versus Todd, they have right. Devin versus Todd should have been right, but Devin is no longer an honorable stand-up power arm wrestler. But we'll get into that. So, yeah, Matt was a huge favorite, the biggest favorite on the card. It went as we thought. Unfortunately, there was an injury. And Sylvain Perron was sitting back or on his way home right now thinking, I wish they would just leave me alone. I wish every time I want to get out, they keep pulling me back in. The pressure from Quebec, guys that train with him. Oh, you got to get out there. You got to go pull John Brzenk. You got to do this. You got to do that. Okay. Now he's re-injured his right. We'll probably need surgery, rehab, all that bullshit. So I feel bad for him. So went as expected, 3-0 Matt Mask. There you go. Yeah.
All right, we'll leave that at that, and let's get into the one that everyone wants to hear about and everyone's been talking about, and it's polarized the entire arm wrestling world for some reason. Some people are really in support of the style that won the matches and that both guys tried to employ at one point. Devin Larratt versus Dave Chaffee. Where do we begin? Match number 1?
Well, the big question coming into this was, can Devin... now I heard... Devin blocked me, so I can't see much, but I heard that he admitted that he was going King right away. Whether that was a little bit of...
He did. I will confirm that. He said, I will go King's move, and it's no secret.
Okay. I heard that. I thought maybe a little bit of gamesmanship. But anyway, so the question in my mind was, will he stand up? Once he loses standing up, what will he do? Right away, I saw the first... I saw a highlight of the first match, and then I started watching it live. And exactly, Dave pinned, it gets overturned, and then right away I had this feeling of, just like Todd Hutchins, he's going to bleed. He's going to bleed. The momentum's going to switch. Now we saw a double king. The last time we saw a double king was Tim Lewis and Mac Telly, circa 2010. It was the ugliest thing arm wrestling's ever seen, but there were 2 novices / amateurs, and we kind of just brushed it off as, oh, well, they don't know what they're doing. It's not really going to hurt the sport. Yes, they were it was a UAL, and it was watched by people, but whatever. They don't know any better. They're just trying to get a win. So now we see another double king. There's a lot of heat on Dave and Devin. Unfortunately, I don't think Dave deserves any of the heat. Dave's never done a king. Dave Dave wants to pull straight up, and Dave, I think, is a very quiet guy. He's a man of integrity and principle, and I think he wanted a certain type of match, and part of him knew he wasn't going to get it. And with the money on the line and everyone watching, I think his body naturally went to a king, and but I don't fault him at all. It's unfortunate that match had to happen, and then late last night into this morning, I start reading posts. And yes, you've got the haters and like me and other ones that just really don't like the King's move and they're voicing their opinion. But then when you see Ron Bath, I don't think since I've been in the sport, I've followed Ron Bath, and Ron Bath has been one of my, much like Dave, he's just a true gentleman, respectful to everyone, and super iconic. And I don't think I've ever read or seen or heard Ron Bath say much negative. And to read the post that Ron wrote, that to me sums up where the sport could go if something's not done, or the danger where it could possibly go. I don't word for word what Ron said, but he was not impressed. I think the word disgusted was in there. And what I find alarming is in the interview after, Devin is like, yeah, it's King move nonchalant, when really he should be in an aura of complete humiliation and embarrassment. I was actually talking to Herman last night. We were talking how all John Brzezinski did last night was show up there and watch. And all his credit did as his career is skyrocket because of that match. Because if there was any doubt who the greatest of all time was, some say Devin, some say John, last night solidifies that it's absolutely John. You, John, Ron Bath, Marcio, all these iconic figures that you can argue in the last 10, 15 years are top, their credit goes up as Devin's goes down because of that match last night. And I don't lose any respect, or I don't think Dave Chaffee's credit goes down any bit, because he did not want to go there. He did not want to do that. So the last three matches Devin pulled, we have Dave Chaffee, we have Todd Hutchins, and we have Denis Saplenkov. Devin, in his last three super matches versus elite pullers, versus power pullers, is now a complete King's move guy. He's not I'll go there if I have to. If the guy's strong, if the guy has an arm, if the guy wants to pull in a slow, powerful way, traditional way, I'm going to run and I'm going to king. This is who Devin is right now. I saw your daughter pulled at nationals. Congratulations, by the way. I have more respect for your daughter as an arm wrestler than I do Devin Larratt, because your daughter is not hurting the sport. Devin is completely has the potential right now to have a devastating, cascading impacts to our sport.
Well, I will read it to you. As you're talking, I pulled it up, and I said, Ron Bath said, "I can't believe I stayed up to watch that joke called arm wrestling. Yeah. The super heavyweight class is some great and powerful guys, but what they are making of this sport is a joke." Yeah. That was the comment. Now, going into the match, for me, I thought, this comes down to, and for Devin, it's always kind of been this way. Can he bleed out the guy enough to beat him over the distance? And every time the match stops, every time the match gets restarted, it favors Devin. They're screwing around a little bit. Devin's gamesmanship came down to downright insulting all the way up to the match. Like, entertaining, yes. Super disrespectful to Dave Chaffee, absolutely. Yeah. They do teach sportsmanship in Canada, but with the exception of me, we're notorious for being kind and gentle and respectful people. Yeah. So match one, I thought that Jennifer was as a downside ref. I thought she got a little bit overzealous, and she actually probably hurt Dave Chaffee a little bit in that match, because every time the match stops, like I said, it favors Devin. So her getting a little bit excited, calling that pin when it wasn't a pin, and they have to restart. Well, that's one less in the chamber that maybe has 3 bullets in it. Maybe has 3 bullets. Yeah. And he just fired one of them into the sky. So now he's got maybe 2 left, which means Devin's winning that match. Yep. Dave gets a pin, and then all of a sudden it's a little bit harder, sitting there in the King's move. Dave gets tired, tries the same thing that he's never done in a tournament ever, or in a match ever, as far as I know. No, never. And, you got guys sitting on the floor, and Dave actually was lower than Devin. Again, put there, doesn't train in the King's move, not efficient. And Devin's King move was so deplorable, so extreme,
that I recall, this is me saying it, who's Michael Todd's biggest critic, saying, I kind of miss Michael Todd because Michael Todd's king wasn't as low as Devin's king. Like Michael Todd goes low, yes. And sometimes we've seen Michael go low, but we've never seen, or recently seen Michael complete arm bent, straighten to the point where your shoulders tucked and your head's border, like, I don't know, man, that was just gross. And of course, Michael Todd's sitting there thinking, I ain't looking too bad right now.
Well, yeah, Michael's looks different. Crazy George's looks a little bit different.
Yeah.
There is a version of the King's move that doesn't look like a King's move. It's just using negative pressure to come around your opponent.
Yeah.
People will label it like that a lot, but sitting on the floor, that's something different.
And, when Bart Wood is 5'10.5", and the two opponents are 6'2" and 6'6" respectively, and they're both under Bart's pec, that's not a good optics for our sport.
Yeah.
That's not a good two novice guys, who cares? When you have two of the top 3, 4, and I believe Dave's right arm is right now. I claim that Dave's the strongest arm wrestler, top 2 arm wrestler in the world, just sheer power and strength. And to see him being forced to have his chin at table level, 2 feet below the vision of the ref, both refs, not a good optics for the sport, not good at all. But Devin doesn't seem to give a shit about that. As long as he gets paid, as long as he wins, like he said, and like his supporters say, whatever it takes to win. Whatever it takes to win. Whatever it takes to win at war, whatever it takes to win at politics. Who gives a about ethics, integrity, optics, and perception? As long as you fucking win, right, Devin? Good for you. You're a winner, and you also have zero fucking integrity. Good job. You're a fucking hero.
Why don't you tell us how you really feel?
Yeah. No.
Well, overall, what do you give it out of 10? The whole event last night.
The worst I've seen, and I've every wall card I've watched, I've seen discrepancies in reffing. I've seen terrible reffing, and I don't believe it's Bart's fault. I believe Bart is given an agenda. I believe match to match. So I don't blame Bart under a shitload of stress and anxiety to fucking ref that shit and all that garbage and junk. Every wall card seems to have 1 or 2 matches I like to see. Todd Hutchins and Ron Bath, 2 power guys, 2 diesel trucks going at it. I can watch that shit all day. No runners, no evasion. You and Jerry, I mean, you're not a hooker. You're a great top roller, but you're also not it's technically proficient, and you don't drop. But this card, Ryan Bowen was the saving grace. His match was a saving grace. That was a good match. That was a good. It was good for him. It was good for Australia to watch. I mean, that stole the show. But it does not counterweigh the potential devastating effects that the last match had. Hopefully, but part of me is happy because when you need change, when you want change, and I was reading Dan Worley's, he had hundreds of comments and replies, and Ron Bath. When you want change, when you need change, you don't need something moderate to happen. You almost need something grossly extreme to happen for change to happen. So last night was not the worst case scenario. No. If Dave stood up and Devin went down, but not down low enough, and it was typical Michael Todd type king and bled Dave, nothing changes. The fact that Dave was forced to go low, and now we're looking at a potential match of Devin and Michael Todd, which potentially could go lower. I mean, this could be the first match ever where both asses are on the ground for minutes. If Wall doesn't look into this, they're completely idiotic. If they don't have people reading feedback on social media, they're not doing their job. So overall, in terms of impact that can happen, I think it was a good card. Optically it was the worst. For change to happen in our sport, it wasn't the worst case scenario, but we'll see.
What if I argued with you and said that the fact that everyone's talking about it, regardless of their opinion or outrage, it might be a good thing for the sport?
I had a theory a couple months ago after the last card that they purposely wanted Bart to grossly miscall one match or that was terribly reffed, only to spur massive chatter. Because I don't know if how they benefit from tons and tons and tons of social media chatter, but I believe they must. I mean, any feedback is productive feedback. But what happened last night with Dave and Devin, the feedback is not, or it's not just chatter. It's threats of, I'm not watching Wall again. If this continues, I'm going to quit. I'm going to stop. The feedback is too destructive. It's no longer kind of constructive criticism or a little bit of hating. Now it's becoming potentially destructive. Now, Wall doesn't give a fuck about the destruction or the partial destruction of our sport. They don't care. But if it costs them viewing, now all of a sudden they got to pay attention. Now, I believe a match like Todd Hutchins versus Jerry will get a lot of views. People want to see that. But now if you have a Devin Larratt, Michael Todd matchup, I almost think it's going to hurt their viewing. Most people, I don't know. I don't know. I can tell you that the only reason I watch Devin pulling is to hope for, is either to laugh, to hope for a loss, or potentially an injury that can put an end to the merit of the King's move. But I do not watch it for pleasure or to there's no nice optics. I wrote a post, or I made a comment a couple hours ago, that we start arm wrestling in high school on fucking cafeteria tables to see who's stronger, to see, even if the guy's a little bit stronger, maybe I can stop him. Maybe I have more balls and heart and stamina and I can just outgrind him. There is an honor between two men trying to figure out who's stronger or who has more physicality, albeit conditioning or brute strength. There is something beautiful and honorable in that, and that's why we all start arm wrestling. Top rolling happened, and I'm okay with top rolling. Top rolling it requires a lot of strength in the hand, wrist, back pressure, bicep. I have nothing against top rolling. The King's move is destroying every traditional honorable thing about arm wrestling that we ever had, where it's complete evasion. And I don't know. Last night, part of me found it laughable. Part of me also found it sad. I was watching it with a guy at work that never watched arm wrestling before, and he was just, "What are you watching?" And he looked at it and he says, "The fuck is that? How tall are these guys?" I said, "One 1'6", the other 1'6'2", and he said, "They're 3 feet. They look like they're 3.5 feet tall." I said, "Yeah, one's forced to be there. The other one's an evasive coward. What do you want?" There's no other way to put it.
Ironically, the way that you could solve the issue with the King's move is bring back sit-down arm wrestling.
Yeah, but then you bring on another world of problems. I think you can fix it by, It might fix the King move, but it pushes out a lot of other. It pushes out Ryan Espy, right? Ryan Espy does not want to see sit-down arm wrestling.
Well, I don't know, man. My right hook's coming along.
I suppose. I'm a hook puller, and I don't want to see sit down. You know how hard that is on the elbow, because you cannot use body momentum to help pin. That's a lot of grinding on the elbow. Yeah. Matches are more prolonged. I think the sport has to go to less long tournaments. We don't need more 8-minute matches.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'm going to talk about a little bit when we get into nationals. Yeah. But to close maybe this subject a bit is, I don't want to see Devin Larratt versus Michael Todd.
Yeah.
I want to see, and I think this is going to happen, I think Jerry is going to beat Todd Hutchins. And that's the match I want to see. I want to see Jerry Cadorette versus Michael Todd for the hammer. Jerry is the last guy to beat Michael Todd, and he's on a bit of a streak. So why not give the guy what he deserves?
Yeah. And here's a guy, when he beat Michael Todd, the same guy at work asked me, has anyone recently beat the King mover Michael Todd? And I said, one guy did. And he said, did he get under the table like Chaffee or Devin? I said, no, he just outwilled. He just pushed harder. That was a beautiful fucking match. That was, to see Jerry do that was what a fucking Jesus Christ. That was pure will and resolve.
One of the things you missed last night, if you didn't see all the stuff in between the matches, was that all the arm wrestlers were interviewed, and they said, "What is the craziest thing you've ever seen in WAL?" And it was almost completely unanimous that it was the 7-minute long match where Jerry beat Michael Todd.
And there's a notion that Michael Todd, I have more stamina. You are not fading. You are not being bled out. If you look at Jerry's red in the face, Jerry's heart rate, Jerry's blood pressure, all that shit, it's off the charts. If you hooked him up to an EKG, the fucking thing would probably go ballistic. And then you have Michael Todd sitting back on an invisible chair at a heart rate of 75 to 80. Jerry's at 135, 140. And Michael Todd's like, no one could outwill me. No one has my stamina. Motherfucker, you have neither. You sit back on leverage. And you got beat, literally got beat by true will, true resolve, true pain threshold. Mike acts like I break my arm 70 times. I broke my arm 70 times. I have this incredible threshold for pain. You don't have any of that. Albeit you might have many micro breaks. What Jerry did was exactly what you claimed to be: heart, balls, pain threshold, the unwillingness to relent on a match. Love Jerry. Can't stand the King move.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah, and for a guy that.
But I'd love to see Jerry hold a hammer. Jerry is deserving to be crowned. Crowned. Fuck. That term.
You can't get away from it, man. You can't get away from it.
Jerry deserves it. I hope, and he's the type of man and type of style, the type of honor that deserves to hold the number one title.
So you want to talk about? You ready to move on from WAL?
Sure.
Are we going to put it behind us?
No, we'll put it behind us. I'll just say, although I'd love to see Jerry win, and we can make a side bet, I have Todd Hutchins beating him.
You know what?
We'll do it.
I'll bet you right now. How much?
I'm not a political real estate guy, so I don't know how much money I get. Let's go 20. I don't care. I can't go
20.
20
it is.
Okay, I got Hutchins. You got Jerry. Rock and roll.
Okay. Yeah. All right. In a month, we'll find out.
Yes, sir.
Now, you got questions about the Canadian Arm Wrestling Nationals that just happened.
Okay, so again, we come from talking about some stuff that's destructive to the sport, and we talk about record number of entries for Canadian Nationals, and I heard with kids it was close to 600. And if that's true, which I believe it is, that's a great thing. It looks like arm wrestling in Canada has never been bigger. The children, the grassroots, the youth has never been has had more involvement and participation. The feedback I got was great. Everyone had a blast. The medals looked awesome. I don't believe there was any injuries. The reffing is always A1 with our Canadian refs. What was I thinking? The only thing did Eric Rousset, who's a fucking physical specimen, probably walking around at 6% body fat, only pulled masters. Like, dude, maybe he had a grip thing coming up, but I was disappointed to not see him pull open. I would have liked to see how his left could have done in the 198 open.
Well, you can make a case that the Masters in some ways is tougher than the Open because, man, you would have thrown Fraser Benoit.
No.
And Mark McPhail into that Open class. No. That thing would have been nuts. There was already so many guys in there that could win that tournament on any given day, and it should have been all of them. But those guys went to war the day before, and I'll let you run with what you saw because of course you experienced a lot more. You were there, I wasn't there, but I did want to ask you. I made a note of asking you. Very often, Justin Major comes in, and he's not far from me. He trains out of Montreal sometimes, and we train together. And I see him getting better and better. And I mean, he has stuff to work on, but his high game in his hand. So I wanted to ask you, what did you feel? What was your reaction? Did he give you any type of problems up high in any part of the match, in any part of the setup? Did you feel threatened? And what do you think of him in the future as a potential elite arm wrestler? That's a great question. That was my second day of arm wrestling, but I did not really have a hard match on the Masters day, admittedly.
Who did you beat in the finals, by the way, in the Masters? Did Jeff Slater pull Masters?
No, he didn't. He pulled the Open. So Rob McNamara was the guy in the finals, I think, both arms.
Okay.
So going into the Open day, when I pulled Justin, I actually gripped him low. And I didn't hit anyone all day long. So there was two guys I hit. I hit Vitaly from Alberta because he's just a huge, intimidating guy. I thought, okay, maybe he's got some power. I don't want him to get dug in. I hit against him, and I hit a little bit against Justin. Those were the only two guys. But I gripped Justin low because last year his high game was a little bit better than I thought it was going to be, and I just wanted to contain his hand. So we went over a little bit. He completely dumped his hand, and I foolishly just grabbed a finger and held on to it. So he pulled me from here to here, and then I just couldn't hold on to the finger anymore, and it slipped out. In the strap, my arm didn't go past center. So
nice.
It was just me hitting from here to the pin. It was, I will tell you that Justin is coming along. He's made gains since last year. His wrist can be a little bit suspect compared to the power he has in his fingers. But I mean, what is he, 22 years old? Like, he's going to be.
I got a funny story for you, just not to sidetrack you too long. But we were he came to practice once, and he was scruffy with a beard, and I said it was a tournament coming up, and they were offering a Masters. I said, "Are you going to pull Masters too?" He's like, "Dude, I'm 22." I'm like, "Bullshit! You look 45." Like, I thought he was 45. Like, he scruffy. Like,
when he shaves his beard, it takes 20 years off.
Yeah, I bet. And we had a good laugh. But yeah, he's young with a world of potential, I think.
What is he, like 6'5", 6? Like, he's taller than
Yeah, he is much like younger people. His problems come in confidence and dealing with nerves and stuff like that when the match doesn't go his way. But he has wins on Paquette. Paquette's a fucking a stud. He's just tremendous. Like, yes, he's got a big hand, which is not uncommon for a guy his size. But I find his wrist is really strong. He would go in a strap with me, and of course, and he would let me even left where he's weaker and I'm stronger, and he would let me set my hook in a strap with low strap setting, everything, and I can engage, and he would still kind of like pop me out. And you're thinking, well, fuck, I should hope so, but it's not overly common. I don't care how big a guy is, for someone to do that. Although you can do it easily, but I just thought he's so impressive in his ability to pronate in any position, pronate off a hook, pronate going back, and at his age, and he's got a world of stamina too. I've seen him on the table, kind of like Devin, where he just goes right and left, one guy after the other, just keep his ability to try to increase his conditioning is very good. So I see a bright future with him, and he's a good guy. He's just a great guy. He's there's a lot of big guys at practices that try to avoid the 210-pound muscular guy that might make them look foolish. He's not like that. He will pull anyone over and over. He's okay taking losses. He wants to learn. He's got a great attitude. So that's why I wanted to ask you what you thought, because I thought his future is quite bright.
Yeah, I mean, he's progressing steadily. I do think he's going to be the man at some point.
Oh yeah.
In Canada, it might take 5-6 years, but he's definitely coming along, and he's, as long as he stays injury free, and that's an issue. I think he's got an issue with his left wrist. We talked about it. I gave him a little bit of advice. He seems to have the same issue that I had years ago, and I had a chiropractor fix it, of all people, because conventional medicine couldn't.
Okay.
And hopefully he works it out, and he could be the man at some point in the future. But yeah, big kid, and super.
And so about you, how did your shoulder handle 2 days of arm wrestling? Are you okay? Are you fully recovered? Were there ramifications afterwards? Any pain? Any discomfort?
It set me back a couple of days, but not too bad. Like, it was sore. I did have it worked on by the week after I got home from pulling Jerry. I started with an athletic therapist that had me doing stuff and working on it. And then when we got there was a manipulative therapist at the Nationals that helped me loosen it up before the matches. And I committed to basically hooking just about 95% of the guys I pulled. And it took a lot more pressure off when I wasn't pronating, it doesn't hurt nearly as much. Yeah. So it doesn't affect rotation.
There's a notion that hooking leads to more injuries. I find when I start playing around with pronating, and you kind of get out, your arm gets out of position, but you still kind of pronate. I find when a hook match goes wrong, you get pinned, or you end up on your bicep a little bit more than you want to. But when pronation's involved and it goes wrong, the potential for injuries is greater. I don't know this for sure. It's just an opinion, but I find anytime I've gotten tweaks or I'm worried about my arm, it's always been pronating and going back. It's never been committing to inside arm wrestling.
It's a really good, that's a rational theory, because pronating is not as natural a position for a person to be in. So I think you're onto something there. I don't know. It's tough. Everybody's different too. So but keeping on with Nationals, I mean, I don't have a ton of feedback to give you other than the tournament was huge and took forever.
Was it a long day?
It was
2 days actually. Yeah.
Nationals is now triple elimination on both days.
No, it is not.
It is.
They still do triple elimination?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It used to be double in the Masters, and now it's triple as well. So
started at 9 a.m., done by 11 p.m. Is that it?
Well, close. It was 10 a.m. and I think it was the referee clinic was supposed to start at 6 p.m. on Saturday, and it just got canceled because it was 8 by the time we were out of there. And the next day was not that much different. It was done a little bit earlier because we didn't have the kids and the Masters and disabled all that stuff. But I mean, there were some high points that are pretty memorable from the tournament. Watching my daughter arm wrestle, obviously, was amazing. I watched Fraser and Mark McPhail just kill each other, and that was one of the best arm wrestling in a hook I've seen in a long time. Then we had
who won?
Fraser? No, Mark won.
Wow, jeez.
Yeah, and then we had Jose Morneau pulled in 4 classes on Saturday and 4 classes on Sunday.
Wow,
that was crazy to me. Like, she was going for 8 national titles in one shot. Like, pull the Masters in her own class, the Masters a class up, open her own class, open a class up. It was the super heavyweights. And then she runs into Christine Flicka, who beats her, and they go back and forth. Like, there was losses on both sides of that table before it was done. By the time she was done arm wrestling, girls were just walking up and beating her that would normally not even stand a chance. Like, it was.
Did she or Christina Flicka beat Sarah Wilson from Ontario in the Open heavies?
I think no.
That's a bad one.
Alma got a match on Sarah Wilson.
She got one, but Sarah is one bad motherfucker. That chick got her dad's genetics. That chick can fucking arm wrestle. She's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of hers.
I mean, otherwise the whole tournament's kind of a blur for me, but it was good.
Best individual performance by an arm wrestler. The most standout performance by any arm wrestler at nationals. Who?
Christine Flicka.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second question. Best performance by a province. What province? Obviously the host. Would you say it's a host, or was there another province that stood out? Quebec's notorious for not traveling. It seemed like Quebec traveled. They had a good
team.
Yeah, 8, 9, couple.
Yeah.
I think they got 6 golds. Quebec.
How familiar are you with Jason Levine?
Yeah, New Brunswick. He's coming to Avi's event. Avi's having a WWA event next Saturday. I'm reffing. He has like a 15 super match card. He's got it is a stacked card. You got Canada's former strongman pulling Brendan Mulhill. I mean,
I saw that.
That's a crazy. I mean, he's a bigger man than you. That's insane. And I get to ref that.
So I think Stano Province would have to be the host.
Yeah,
I mean, it's always the host. I think that Manitoba brought the biggest kids team outside of the host province.
Okay.
Like, Peguis First Nation took a bus full of kids.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I've seen that.
And Jason Levine, though, that guy, man,
pulled 198s.
Yeah, he won the 198s right-handed.
Wow.
On the practice table afterwards, I was pulling and pulling and pulling, and I saw him standing there. I said, "You just stay over there, man." And he eventually jumped up there, and I pulled with him for a bit, but he was the first guy to put my arm down that night. So
nice.
Man, he's tough.
He's got a match with a local Quebec guy named Regis Poulain, and I just think good for him for taking that match. But man, Levine is like every once in a while you see these arm wrestlers that are just progressing at an insane rate, and Jason's one of those guys, and sky's the limit.
Well, I grip up with him. He's a 200-pound man, and I grip up with him, and it feels like a super heavyweight hand.
Oh yeah,
like for sure. Like he's going to be someone to watch.
Love it. Good for nationals. 600 entries. We had years ago. Entries were a little bit low, and I know they were talking about where can we host it, where we can guarantee get a lot of entries, and there was a little bit of, I think the person hosting it, there was people losing money, but I think it's in good hands. I'm super critical. I'm super critical of nationals. Always have been. I just don't believe any tournament should have qualification, not in a sport that struggles with participation. But anyway, being a Canadian and seeing 600 entries is always a good day. I like that. It's moving in the right direction for sure. I bust hard on Rick Pickney. Like, I'm hard on Rick, and he just sits there and takes my shit and throws back facts and stuff. And I don't know if there's I'm not a guy that's super prideful to be anything other than who I am in terms of my race or where I'm born. But I could tell you that I'm fucking proud to live in the same country as Rick Pickney. That's a good dude. That's a man of integrity, a kind, gentle man. Gives everything about him to the sport. Yeah, big
Well,
fan
that
of Rick
might be a
Pickney.
good segue to talk about WAF and IFA then.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because we actually, the executive at Nationals actually voted on whether or not to suspend Rick Pinkney.
Based on what?
So here's the story. Rick has obviously jumped over to the IFA, and WAF has been doing some suspensions. They've sent some letters. They've made their intentions clear that PAL and anyone kind of associated with IRPA, which is the United Ratings of Pro Arm Wrestling, would be no longer in compliance or in good standing with the World Arm Wrestling Federation. So Rick, on his own, not as president, and not certainly dragging us into it as a country, is now on the referee panel for the IFA, having not been invited to WAF, I assume, but he's on the referee panel. So a letter was received by Canadian Arm Wrestling Federation stating that we would like action against your president, Rick Pinkney. And if you do not comply with our request, you will not be in compliance or not be in good standing with the World Arm Wrestling Federation. And then it went on to talk about how WAF can basically suspend anyone from competing or officiating for any organization they don't agree with, and they weren't specific on what that meant. So it could mean WAL, it could mean PAL, it could mean the Fit to Fight Arm Wrestling League in Saskatchewan. So based on that, there's a few of us that spoke up. I'm not a voting member, but I did attend just to speak on behalf of the IFA and Rick. And it was put to a vote, and Rick is still our president. So we had to take that stand, and I think the message back to WAF is pretty clear that we'll not be told what to do, and we will not be told where arm wrestlers can and cannot compete.
Good for you guys. Good for Rick. That's horseshit.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was it didn't seem like a very hard decision to me.
No,
as far as taking a stand against that, I don't feel like any organization should have the ability to tell us what we can and cannot do. So that being said, Team Canada does still intend to attend the WAF Championships in Romania coming up, I believe, in November. And then there is a team forming to go to the IFA World Championships in December in Poland. Now, you mentioned earlier that you didn't like it when organizations tried to govern or have a qualification process. The IFA appears to not have a limit on entries from each country. So if you want to go, you can go.
Yeah, I like that, man. I'm a, open door to anyone. You don't have the experience, you get injured, it's on you. You got to sign a waiver. More is better. Qualification costs money. People don't have the money to qualify and then go fly and do something else. So good for Igor. Is it the future? We'll see. But
yeah, and seems to have the right people in control. So I like the fact that we're still doing something, and they're moving forward with it. And it reminds me of 1997 when WAF split. And the World Championships were taken away from Thunder Bay in 1998, and there was 2 WAFs for a while.
It was taken away from Thunder Bay?
It was taken away. That's what started the whole thing going. Was the World Arm Wrestling or World Arm Sports Federation took away the World Championship from Thunder Bay and I believe gave it to Egypt. And in response, WAF split, and there was a World Championship in Thunder Bay with a limited number of countries, but pretty star-studded cast. Marcio was there. Neil Pickup was there pulling. Yoshi Kanai was there in the 176 class.
176?
176. If you can believe that. So it was a good tournament. But, yeah, that was before I was even able to qualify for Worlds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what's next for you? Worlds? WAF? Is that your next event?
If I go to Worlds, it'll be the IFA Worlds.
Okay.
So it's a matter of economics, right? So if I get enough money raised, I'll go. That's the only way I can go. I'm not going to I'm not at this time able to just fund the whole trip myself. So I'll wait and I will see what happens with sponsorship. There's the possibility that the WAL will call and I will be offered a match at some point in the next, well, 2 events from now, which I believe are the finals. And I think I would need an opponent that was really pushing hard from the other side to get that match. I don't think that they would be jumping up and down about bringing me back for some reason. Like some guys come in, have a couple of matches, and then they don't hear from them for a little while. Other than that, I'm thinking about the Arnolds. How about you?
Well, next Friday I have an event. I live right up, not far from the Vermont border. Next week there's a county fair tournament I'll be going to on a Friday evening, which I love. The next day I go to Montreal and Abby has this big event, and I'll be reffing. That'll be exciting. And then August 10th is Michigan State. August 9th there's a huge, usually gets 200-300 entries, county fair in Vermont at Addison County Fair, usually run by Bill Sinks. I'm going to try to go to that one. So what I have to do is I have to get in my car. I have to get there for about 5 p.m. I have Fridays off, so no big deal. After the tournament, I cannot mess around. I get in my car. I drive to Battle Creek, Michigan. I should be arriving around 10:30, 11 a.m. I weigh in. Weigh-ins end at noon. And then I pull 76s and then drive home. So we're looking at 36 hours of driving and 45 hours, 50 hours.
Holy crap.
Yeah. My left, I'll pull right Friday and I'll pull right Saturday, but I'd keep my left fresh for Michigan so I can guarantee myself at least one of those great gorilla things. Those trophies, man, I know you've never been, but that is by far the best award I've ever seen at any arm wrestling tournament since I've been in sports in 2004. And top 3 get one, right? $20 entry gets you a shot at top 3 to get one of those gorillas. And good for Steve Pettis, because that was also one of the funnest events I've been to, too. The blaring heavy metal music in the background. They had vintage cars staged on the side, food, good people. Event ran quick. So, yeah, I told him I'd always try to make that event. He changed the date this year from September. So, unfortunately, I'm going to have to try to go to Addison Friday because I never missed that event either, and then rush to Michigan right after to get there in the morning. It's about a 14-hour drive. But great events deserve participations and support, so I'll try to do what I can do. Other than that, there's nothing planned in the fall, winter. Just training and taking things week by week.
Right on.
Yeah.
No super match coming up with Drellick?
Yeah. Here's another thing, too. He wanted to do... He's not a bad dude, but I don't think I've ever been rubbed the wrong way fundamentally by a certain person. Again, he wanted to have me come over for a super match and pay for me and Herman, pay for our travels. To pay for our travels, he was going to hold a seminar and charge $20-25 per person. And I said, "Is that how you're funding my travels?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "You can fund my travels and I'll go, but not off the back of new arm wrestlers that want to learn." I'm a complete prick and people hate me, and I get that. But one of my values is if someone needs help based on something that they're passionate about that could help their happiness or well-being, I cannot charge. When it comes to training advice, or I just don't believe we should charge based on things where we can help someone's quality of life. I'm not talking car mechanics or accounting. I'm talking about things that people are passionate about. And he, of course, refused. So basically what was happening, he couldn't beat me. He can't touch me. But he wanted to organize a super match to draw attention to him. So basically the novice pullers or the people that were going to pay for the seminar in Minnesota were going to fund his ability to draw attention with a super match off me. And I don't like any of that. Especially when he's not it's not a viable super match for him. We're not in the same league. He might think we are, but we're not.
Yeah.
I did not like that. And at that point, I lost a lot of respect for him. Coincidentally, with all the negative feedback regarding his role on podcast, everything came to fruition for me, and I decided I got to make a move. I believe that move was going to force me and Herman together and force Joe where he initially, what the deal was, where he's going to be 1/3 of the profits equally, but he was going to be on the tech side while me and Herman did the podcast. He lost his shit. Herman didn't want to enforce anything. ARMHUB dissolved. I had to apologize to Herman. Oddly, of all the arm wrestlers that I've ever met, ever heard of, Devin, John Brzenk, yourself, Ron Bath, the arm wrestler that I have the most respect for in the history of arm wrestling is Herman. So not being able to do a podcast with him, I had to, and human nature took its course, but I had to apologize, and he said, no apology necessary, we're good. Herman knows me well, and he knows that I have the ability to leave something very quickly if I don't feel right about it, and he held no ill will. He's an interesting dude, not emotional, very calculating and very understanding, and rarely makes decisions based on emotion, which is rare today. So again, unfortunate, but not regrettable. And, it thrusted us into where we are now with Crossfire, and we're going to, have a good run at this, hopefully, and it'll be a blast. And
Yeah, I think so too, man.
Yeah.
So we got a couple things we got to wrap up here. We got some Q&A.
Sure.
And, despite us not having a single stitch of comment on any content on there at all, we got a pretty good number of subscribers so far.
Yeah.
And we got some questions. So here is the first one. And this should be interesting to hear your take on this. And I've got some opinions on it. So it says here, you ready for this?
Yep.
November 2018, Denis Saplankov beat Devin Larratt in a left-handed 6-round super match in what arguably could have been the most dominant left-handed super match of all time. My question is, was there ever a version of left-handed Travis Badgett that could beat the Denis that beat Devin on that day? If not, could Travis get to that level that he could beat Denis?
Awesome question. And it's a tricky question, only because what do we know? We know that Denis played with Devin, which made him look dominant. But we have to understand, or in my opinion, Devin's been on a decline since 2015-16. So when you say he played with Devin, he didn't play with the 2011 version of Devin, or even the version that beat Andre. May you rest in peace. So there's a variable I don't really know, and we can argue that Denis's left might be the strongest arm we've ever seen, and I believe it might be. So the answer to the question, there is a version of Travis that will beat Denis. Travis is a funny cat. He's super self-serving, super selfish, and hyper-focused when enough money's on the line. With enough money, and Travis is incredibly analytic and super intelligent, and like I said, hyper-focused when he's motivated. With enough resources, quote unquote, and drive and motivation, I've claimed it before, and I'll claim it again. The best arm the sport has ever seen is Travis's left when motivated and hungry. So yes, there is a version. The 2006, 2008, when he was working for, when he was sponsored by, Travis and John were sponsored by a company that starts with a V. Anyway.
Viotech. Is it Viotech?
I think so. And so that version that we saw John Brzenk at the Arnold Classic in 2008 at 240 pounds, play with Ron Bath, looked dominant. Respectively, at the same time, Travis's left was equally, if not more dominant. Often Travis gets bored because he's not a guy that, I don't think he loves arm wrestling. He loves what arm wrestling can bring to him. So he's not a guy that's always training and always involved in the sport. I think he fades back and like an assassin, like a sniper. He picks his moments and he hits hard. So I believe if we can pluck, or just theoretically, with enough money, left-handed, Travis would beat anyone. I even believe with enough money, right-handed, because I don't think Travis pays that much attention to his right. I think with enough money, let's say $1 million. Travis, $1 million, you have 6 months, right-handed, left-handed. Do you fear anyone? He'd pull anyone, and I believe he'd be a favorite either arm. But arguably, there's a group of right-handed pullers that can maybe beat him. Left-handed, I believe the best version of Travis beats the best version, or the version we saw of Denis versus Devin. Only because Devin couldn't threaten him anywhere. He couldn't threaten his hand, he couldn't threaten his arm, and he's no longer the puller that prides himself on physicality. Devin is no longer that guy. He doesn't pride himself in physicality, being endurance, brute strength. He's not that guy anymore. So he's been an innovator since 2015-16, and he went against arguably the strongest arm we've ever seen, and he got smoked. But that does not necessarily mean Dennis is the baddest motherfucker to ever live left-handed. He might be, he's definitely in the conversation, but I still give the edge to Travis because of the intangibles. Dennis is limited with his thinking ability, limited in his in some of the intangible qualities that make a champion a great champion.
Yeah.
Travis is not. The only thing that Travis lacks is just general motivation and desire, which comes to the forefront when there's enough money involved, which why I've claimed he's the best money arm wrestler of all time. So to answer that question, yeah, Travis can. There is a version of Travis, and yes, I believe he beats Dennis.
Yeah, I can't pinpoint a time in history when I think that I would agree that that's the guy, but I do think that there is a version of Travis that can beat him, and I think Travis said it himself best, that given the time to train and the right motivation, and that motivation is six figures for sure.
Yeah.
That he would do what he would need to do to get ready for Dennis, and I believe that aside from the power game, that is the only place that Dennis is superior, is in power. And I think that the gap isn't big enough that Travis couldn't close it enough that the other parts of his game could take over. I do think Travis could get there with the right motivation. But this is a conversation that's hard to have right now because, I mean, arguably Travis could get there in 6 months. Dennis won't be ready to arm wrestle in 6 months. He may never be ready again. I mean, I wish him the best, but I mean, he's got some issues right now.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, we talked about theoretically the best of Travis with motivation, but Dennis would have with enough money. Dennis would have coaching. He would have. He would be slightly. Everyone's motivated by money. So I mean, it's hard to say. They're both elite, excellent arm wrestlers. But Travis has more tools in his toolbox psychologically. The match can go wrong, and Travis can find a way. Dennis is much like Dave. They're goddamn diesel trucks. But when something goes wrong, they just don't have the ability to dig deep and either find an adjustment or to still have a deep belief in what they can do. Travis has that. Devin at one point had that. So I just give the edge to Travis. He's just proven when the money's right and the motivation is there, he's proven that he's almost untouchable. Now, you've had super matches with Travis. I remember when I came in 2004, I believe you had a super match with Travis in 2002 or 3 where you flew him out east. Was it out east? And you had a super match.
Yeah, we met up in Halifax. So I know you have. You can speak better to this because you pulled Travis. I don't think you pulled Dennis. Have you ever pulled Dennis? No. Never.
No. So it's a better question for you than me. I just my intuition tells me to go with Travis only because strength is easy to attain. An elite arm wrestler can become a very strong elite arm wrestler with the right resources and knowledge. What makes someone the greatest of all time or the best arm of all time is in what he can do in preparation, adjustability, all the intangible things. So I tend to go with Travis. But then again, if they did have this theoretical matchup and Dennis just looked at him and pinned him, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I wouldn't be surprised because Travis is a runner. Travis is doesn't train to stop and grind. And so if the match stopped, Dennis would kill him. So I don't know. I can see it going both ways. It's an excellent question regardless. Who asked that? Because that's a great question.
The guy is Constant Incel who can't get laid. That's his name.
almost sounds like one of my troll accounts. Actually, that could be me. Did I?
Did you ask that question?
That's pretty brilliant. If I did, ask us a question. It's a great question.
And the same guy asked he wants clarification on the Gobby rating system. I guess it would be your tier system.
Yeah.
So once you explain that, I'm going to throw a bunch of names at you, and I want you to tell me where they are.
Well, your tier 1 is your beginner. So tier 1, basically, the way I look at it, I'm going off the top of my head. I have it written down somewhere, but I'll try to go off the top of my head. Tier 1 is a guy that can pull in an amateur tournament, and he won't win it. He won't finish top 3, but he might get a win or two. But he's definitely not winning or most likely finishing high in an amateur tournament. So your basic beginner. Level 2 is second level and is still an amateur level. The level 2 is a guy that will most likely clean up in an amateur tournament or blast through the preliminaries and could arguably in a pro class win a match with one of the weaker guys. Now, it's very important. When I say pro tournament, we're not talking pro because we're given nice trophies. We're talking, when I say pro tournament, I mean like an Arnold Classic, a pro tournament that draws elite pro arm wrestlers because there's good money. Not a little bit of money, but good money. So we're talking Michael Classic, former Michael Classic tournament. We're talking Arnold Classic. We're talking stuff like this. So that's your number 2. And a large percentage of the arm wrestling community fall in 2 and 3. Anyway, so the number 3 guy is a guy that obviously doesn't pull amateur anymore. He's a pro. Now, he can mess it up in a pro class. He can win a couple matches. But he's most likely, he could arguably maybe fit in the top 3 depending on how many. But he's definitely not winning a pro tournament. Absolutely not. Your number 4 guy is a guy who mixes up very well in the pro tournament, has proven to finish top 3, and can conceivably win it. He's an elite. Level 4 and 5 are elite pros. He's an elite arm wrestler that everyone has to take serious. Now, your level 5, there might only be a handful in the world. Level 5 is a guy that can go to CAWF, like a Rustam Babayev, where guys almost lay down to him because they know they have no chance and they don't want to exhaust their arm. These are guys that walk into a room, dominant alpha figure, where guys are just like, shit, I hope I don't have to deal with this guy. And this guy usually is a dominant favorite to win the class and will breeze through preliminaries. Now, once you understand these 5 tiers, you can pretty much bring up every name, and I can put him in a tier. But sometimes, like Paul Lynn, for example, for a while, I said, Paul's on the verge of being a 4, but isn't a 4 yet because it's not proven. I believe he can prove to be a 4 in the next 6 months, but right now he's proven to be a 3. Because this isn't theoretically where a guy would be, it's what he's proven. So it's interesting where you can give me a name and I can say, well, he's a 2, but he's pushing hard to be a 3. So, I mean, it's not super clear cut, but at least it's a somewhat of a measuring stick that we haven't had in the sport before.
All right, man. You ready for the names?
Yeah, rock and roll.
Okay, Michael Todd. Right off the bat.
You know what? I got to be objective, and by my tier system and the fact that although I hate the move, most of the time his king move is within the rules. Fuck me. He should be a 5 within my system. He's probably a 5. He's a 5 within wall. With walls, pads, and walls rules, he's a 5. In any other tournament in the world, he's a 4. With rigid rules, he's a 4. With walls, loose shit, he's a 5.
Okay. Jerry Carteret.
Jerry's a 4. Jerry's a 4. Jerry right now is a 4. It's kind of hard when a guy only does super matches, because with super matches, you can look awesome stylistically where in a 15-man tournament, because my tier system works on hypothetically 15, 16 guys in the pro tournament, anywhere from 12 to 15 guys in an elite pro cash tournament. So when a guy has a great super match record but avoids tournaments, my scenario is him walking into an Arnold Classic, him walking into a Michael Classic 2008 with 15 of the top elite guys in North America. Is he an automatic win? So not many guys are a 5. So again, Jerry's a 4. Jerry's a 4.
I'll stick with the super heavyweights for now. So Mike Aiello.
Mike a year ago was a 3. Textbook 3. Recently, seeing what he's done, Mike's a 4. Mike's a 4. Yeah, Mike. His right arm's a 4. Recently just jumped into the 4 tier.
Matt Mask.
Matt's an easy. See, that's a good one because he's built for tournament pulling. Not so much super match pulling, but he's built because he has one incredibly awesome fucking, arguably the best move in arm wrestling. Ace of Spades type deal, trump card. Matt's a 4. But Jesus, I can tell you that in a tournament format, like he's a 4 with an asterisk, because in a tournament format, everyone is scared of Matt Mask. Because if you're even iota slow, or you make one little, you're dust, right? He's so explosive and so clinical with his move that I believe he has the optics of being a 5 when he walks into a tournament. But in terms of proving what he's done, he's a 4.
Devin Larratt.
Once was a 5. Once was a 4. He's a 4 with wall, four or five at a wall. If he goes to WAF, he's a 3. If he
Really?
goes into a 15-man elite pro tournament with yourself, with a bunch of studs, double elimination tournament with rigid rules, because my system works on rigid rules. Devin Larratt is a 3. And he'll be a 3 until he quits arm wrestling or until he grows enough balls and testicular fortitude and honor to start standing up to arm wrestle again. Devin's a 3.
Wow, that's bold.
It's bold.
All right.
Read if it's bold, read Facebook. His credit, his reputation, with the exception of John Milne, who naturally has his dick lodged down his throat. Like, they're connected by the scrotum. With the exception of John Milne, who has no objectivity because he's in love with the guy, and the small fan base that Devin has that trains with him, but those guys have no credibility because they're so fucking biased. With the exception of that, his reputation and his street credit has never been worse than it is this morning or as of late last night. So it's not just me.
So if we filmed this 3 days ago, I don't know, maybe a year ago. I don't know.
Yeah,
Would he have been a 4 a year ago in a tournament?
When did he start kinging? Like, when was the first time he started really jumping into the kinging?
It hasn't been that long.
No.
It hasn't been that long.
Well, because it was Todd Hutchins. Oh, he did it with Mask. He's done it off and on with Mask. He's had to king with Mask.
He has.
Just to stop matches and then come back and bleed out Mask. He completely kinged against a lighter, smaller frame Todd Hutchins, which was deplorable and disgusting, running from a smaller man. And then against Dave. And of course, rumors that Devin weighed 270. He did look big. And once I saw how big he looked, I'm thinking he might just stand up and arm wrestle like a man. Nope, back to his stool. So I don't know who Devin is, 3-4. Devin, when you start talking about king moves, guys, it's tough because it's based on the table and the rules in which they are pulling in. The ridge, like, all of a sudden, if the pad went to 9 inches, and we eliminated the pin pad, let's say freedom table. Let's say arm wrestling became freedom table, like Devin likes. Devin would be a 5, get the fuck out of his way. Michael Todd would be a 5, get the fuck out of his way. Matt Mask would be done. You would have trouble. Like, so it depends on the structure and the rules we're talking about, where the guy is 5'4". It's not, but rigid rules. He's a 3-4, fading fast. Yeah, something like that.
All right, Sam Harris.
Yeah, easily a 4. Wouldn't shock me if he's knocking on the door. The only problem with Sam is he's not a big framed middleweight, and although he has an amazing wrist, great top roll, guys like Tony Katowski, who are bigger, that come down in weight, that are probably heavier than him by 15, 20 pounds walking around weight, I don't think he has the mustard to deal with that type of game. And our number 5 guy has no foe or fear. Number 5 guy, there's like 3 guys in the world, or 1 or 2 guys in his weight class in the world that can make him sweat. So that's why, although I love the guy and he's a fucking cool character too. He's a cool, confident cat. What he did to Luke Kent was fucking awesome. But he's a 4. He's a 4.
Jeff Hale.
He's a 4. He's a textbook 4. Can beat these pro elites. Can lose to these pro elites. I'm not a big Jeff Hale fan because a lot of his personality is staged and forced. I like guys that are just themselves and don't give a fuck what people think. Doug was certain guys that just don't give a fuck and are naturally charismatic and confident. I like guys that have to stage it and fake it and it comes off as acting. I'm not a big fan of. So Jeff's great arm wrestler. He's number 4. He has wins on me. He's a stud, but he's a 4. He's a 4.
Alan Fisher.
Again, looking at tournament format, he's got a great move. Because of his great move, he can navigate through a class. I'd say you can argue anywhere from a 3 to a 4, only because his move helps him in a tournament. Anywhere from a 3 to 4, but I'm leaning towards him fading towards a 3. But
I got 2 more left,
yeah.
And they might be the most interesting. You already talked a little bit about this guy, is Ryan Bowen.
Yeah, Ryan's not 4, only because he hasn't proven it in tournament. And although the bottom 8 was impressive, he beat 158-pound weak right arm Chris Gobby, which is any asshole in the world can give my right a hard match. Like, so it's not that impressive. But what he did with Evan was impressive. So based on his match with Evan, it automatically put him as a 3. But again, it was a super match format type deal. Well, ish. But we have not seen Ryan overachieve in a pro elite cash class, full cash class. So I would say Ryan's a 3 with an insane amount of intangible qualities and potential, and can easily become a 4. But from what he's proven, he's the 3, because again, it goes by tournament format. It doesn't go by. And he ate up Guerra, but that was stylistically in his favor. He's a very technically sounded, super adaptable arm wrestler. Probably doesn't have that horsepower at the 200 to 200 weight class to beat guys like Paul Lynn, who are legit 4s. But I love the Justin Bishop matchup. That's a legit matchup. I love that matchup. The only reason why Justin's a 4 and Ryan's a 3 is because Justin can get down to 176 and just destroy shit. Justin Bishop can get to 185 and destroy shit. Ryan's like a soft 210, 12, 15 guy. So maybe he can get to 198. But and he might even beat Justin. But don't forget, he's 20, 30 pounds heavier than Justin.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're 2 different weight classes. One's a 4, one's a 3. Justin's a 4 in his weight class. Ryan's a 3 in his respective weight class.
So I got one more guy, and this probably is the most interesting one. And it shows me that the guy that's asking these questions, even though he's not using his real name, he's aware of a lot of different pullers. The guy he's asking about, the final guy, is Anthony Dall'Antonia.
Yeah. So, and I came into the sport maybe a year after Anthony. We went to you, me, and him were all the Worlds in 2005 in Tokyo, Japan.
Yep.
It was the first time I met you. Well, I met you at the Canadians just prior. First time I met him. I was super impressed with him. I think if my memory serves, he finished 4th and 4th in a very stacked 22-man class. I believe Chris Chandler was in that class too. No, Steve Rao was in that class too. Chris pulled 176 that tournament. And he again, one of the best posting top rollers in Canadian history. Arguably the best middleweight in Canadian history, although we have a long list of great arm wrestlers in Canadian history, especially when you're talking about Dave Hicks, Denny Dubray. But always respectful, indicative of what Canada's all about. Elite, traveled all over the world, supported CAWF, supported WAF many, many times. Anthony in his prime was a 4. In his prime, he was a 4. Now, I don't know. He's probably knocking on the door at 40. I think he started a family. I don't know how focused he is, but he still obviously loves and supports the sport. I'd say he's a 3, but the dude can be a 4. Like, it won't surprise me one bit if he goes to a fucking Arnold Classic and cleans up in the 199s. Like, he can do it, right? He's an awesome arm wrestler. The intangible with Anthony is not his ability or what he can do. Is, again, where is he in life and how motivated is he? But if I heard that Anthony, if I got a message or over the wire that Anthony's super fired up for this tournament in 6 months and he's training like a motherfucker, he's a 4. Like that is a textbook 4. If he's fired up, he's a 4. If he's like, well, he's messing around, he hasn't really trained in 6 months, he's gonna go to this tournament, and he's a 3. But fired up, everything going, the dude's a 4. The dude's awesome. No one who's ever met that guy can ever say anything negative against Anthony Dall'Antonia. He's the only man to ever make Crazy George have a tantrum, spit at the ref, and walk out of the bar after one loss. Not 2, one loss. One loss, walk out of the bar. And all Anthony did was thumb lock him, press him, and smile. Like, love that dude. In Ontario, flies from BC to Mike Gould Classic. Everyone yelling at him, throwing shit. Not technically throwing shit at him, but a huge underdog against an iconic fan favorite. And he's lucid, calm, and takes care of business, and makes the iconic legend lose his shit, stomp out of the bar, and call conspiracy. Whatever. But Anthony's awesome. Anthony Dall'Antonia is a 4. I'll put him as a 4 because that's where he is when he wants to be. So he's a 4, and he's proven to be a 4. So he's a 4.
Well, that's it for the Q&A, man. That's all the names. So if you guys want to drop us some questions, The email address is the best way that you're not going to get missed, and it's canadiangangsters@gmail.com. So it'll be down in the comments section down below. Check it out. Send us something. We'll get back to you in a video upcoming as quick as we can. Man, we've been going for over an hour and a half. How do you feel?
Well, yeah, we're kind of fortunate because we just timed our inauguration with on the day before one of the more controversial matches in the history of our sport. So we're kind of fortunate that way, and we ran with it. And Canadian Nationals were last week too, so we had a lot of material. So moving forward, we'll have to do a little bit more digging, but it'll be fun. And
if worst comes to worst, we can tell stories about Tokyo.
Ryan Stillwell. I think my trolling started with that dude in 2004 before I realized I was going to be a troll. I got that guy mad at me. Anyway, a story for another episode, perhaps. But yeah, it's been a blast. It's a pleasure. I'm glad you contacted me. I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but I knew it had strong potential. It's been fun, and I can see the potential. There's a good dynamic here. You're much like Herman. You're super analytical. You have a lot of credibility. You articulate well, and you feed off my. You feed well off my aggressive nature with your coolness and objectivity. So it's a good team. Yeah, it should make for a good venture.
I think it will, man. It's been a slice. Don't hang up, man. I gotta stop on this so we don't lose the video.
No problem.
But yeah, tune in next week, everybody. It's gonna be every Monday. This is gonna drop. So next week you'll get another one of these fantastic episodes, and hopefully you guys like it. Leave us some feedback in the comments section down below, and don't forget to hit subscribe on the YouTube channel.